In this video, we're going to be looking at the novel The Maltese Falcon, and we'll put a standard edition up against the version from the Folio Society. After considering both, it'll be clear why I'm keeping one and ditching the other. Dashiell Hammett's The Maltese Falcon is an American detective story first serialized in 1929 and then published on its own a year later. It's an influential text that shaped almost all the crime fiction that's followed it. In fact, its fingerprints are present in every detective story I've ever come across, from novels to movies to video games to comic books. While it can feel a little bit familiar, even cliched at times, the fact is that so many of the classic detective tropes originated here. Crime fiction enthusiasts like to be pretty precise with their labels and subgenres, and while we can't necessarily call The Maltese Falcon a noir novel, the protagonist definitely embodies the hard-boiled detective character type. It's an easy read and a page-turner, as the mystery pulls us in with its twists and turns, and we get closer to the truth of the case, along with private detective Sam Spade. It's a fair bet that the 1941 film adaptation with Humphrey Bogart is a lot more famous than the novel that inspired it. However, while it is pulp, with almost cartoonishly rendered simple characters, and the age of the text shows with its dated treatment of ethnicity and femininity, the novel itself is still a fun and worthwhile read. I first read the novel 2 decades ago from this very edition. It's from Vintage Crime Black Lizard, an imprint of Vintage Books, which is a division of Random House. This is the 1992 edition and has seen better days. It's actually been chewed on by a deranged bunny rabbit years ago, so I used the well-known Canadian book repair method to try to save it. Hockey tape. Let's take a look here. That's dirty, boys. Obviously, when I had an opportunity to upgrade to a more prestigious deluxe hardcover edition, I had to take it. So let's upgrade it. Here we have The Maltese Falcon from the Folio Society. This version was originally released in 2000 and is presented in an illustrated slipcase. It features a color image from David Eccles with 2 of the primary characters in front of a falcon silhouette. On one side, it's presented with the author name and the book title, while on the other, it's just the image. The book itself is wrapped in red cloth with the falcon design feathering down the front cover. On the spine, we have in yellow the title and the author name in the same font from the slipcase, along with the publisher's name. The binding is appropriately finished with red and yellow thread. If we crack the book open, we see plain yellow end papers in a medium stock. That immediately leads to the title page, which is a 2-page spread where we're met with more artwork from David Eccles. It features the same 2 primary characters from the slipcase, along with the 3 rogues in silhouette. In the background, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge, the fire on La Paloma, and the falcon silhouette, yet again. We'll get into the art in detail later, as this image provides a great preview of what's to come in the subsequent pages, but for now I just wanted to comment on the bird outline in the background. It feels very appropriate that the first 3 pieces of art we encounter, slipcase, book cover, and title page, are all haunted by the Maltese Falcon. This feels right because so many of the characters in the book are trying to get their hands on this elusive statuette, and it hangs over them like a specter. The book is printed on Caxton wove paper, which is smooth and creamy white, providing that easy reading contrast, which is one of the many reasons why I love Folio Society editions. If we bring back the Vintage Crime edition for a brief side-by-side, we can see that the folio is slightly larger and longer, and the font size is larger too. The paper is whiter, and the text is black and much more crisp. Folio's version is a substantially more pleasant reading experience this time out. It features a unique introduction from detective fiction author Sarah Paretsky. She takes readers through some of Dashiell Hammett's biography and considers a few common interpretations of the text before presenting her own. She doesn't pull any punches, as she analyzes the book in terms of Hammett's fear of dangerous female sexuality. It's fascinating stuff and honestly, almost worth the price of this edition on its own, as it's the best essay I've ever read on the novel, and I've read a few. Towards the end of her 10 pages, she's fair and honest in her appraisal of the novel's strengths and faults, and admits that her own detective fiction exists as a reaction to and against this novel. Then we get a second introduction, this one a reprint of Dashiell Hammett's own 1934 introduction to the novel. It isn't nearly as long or as interesting as Paretsky's, as he quickly alludes to how he picked up and shaped his characters from his own experiences as a Pinkerton detective. Artist David Eccles has 10 illustrations beyond the title page we've already seen. Eccles' style is appropriate here, as the Maltese Falcon was originally published in pulp magazines. Consequently, his focus on scenes of violence, seduction, and fear for the artwork make perfect sense. The black and white comic book style suits the purpose, with heavy shadows, bordered panels, and caption boxes. The Ben-Day dots help give the artwork a vintage feel. The illustrations fall directly adjacent to the text they allude to, which I applaud. What's the point of an illustrated edition if the artwork is 40 pages away from the passage it connects to? The proximity of text and art here makes for an ideal reading experience. Let's take a detailed look at the artwork now. The first illustration features 2 panels as Sam Spade arrives at a crime scene. The first panel provides an establishing shot in silhouette. Then we see the murder weapon being held out toward him from the point of view of the investigating officer. I love the heavy shadows on Spade and the feathering lines on the outstretched hand. The second image is of Bridget O'Shaughnessy imploring Spade for help in her situation. The third illustration, like the first, is constructed with 2 panels. The first circular panel depicts Sam choking out Joel Cairo, which carries over to the second panel as the two continue to struggle while Bridget secures Cairo's neglected weapon. Next, we have another 2-panel composition. The first is of a saucy scene where Sam returns to his bedroom with breakfast and surprises Bridget. The second panel reveals that she's hiding a gun under her pillow. The fifth illustration is a single-panel depiction of Sam Spade smashing his whiskey glass on the table during his meeting with Gutman. The choice to have bits of glass and drink break the panel add to the great sense of movement here and make this my favorite of the bunch. The sixth image is another 2-panel composition. The first panel illustrates the care Sam uses when opening the locked door to his office, while the second depicts him leaning over and awakening his receptionist Effie Perrine, who's held down the fort all night. The expression on Sam's face and the placement of his hands make him look predatory, which isn't right for this scene, as he's actually concerned for her. The next image has a 3-panel layout. The first panel features Sam holding the Maltese Falcon aloft, but again, his facial expression feels off as he looks maniacal. In the second circular panel, Effie Perrine screams in horror as she looks down. The third panel reveals the source of her horror, as Spade has stepped back onto a dead man's outstretched hand. The 8th image is comprised of 2 panels that depict a scene where Sam and Bridget are ambushed in Sam's apartment by the 3 rogues. Wilmer holds out his automatic pistols with a detached, numb look on his face, while Gutman and Cairo approach from the other side. The 9th image is another edgy one that depicts the scene where Sam Spade feels he needs to search Bridget in the bathroom to ensure she isn't hiding the missing $1,000 bill. The final image is another 2-panel composition. It depicts the final conversation between Sam and Bridget as the police arrive at the apartment. The grim and steadfast expression on Spade's face is on point here, and it contrasts against the emotion in Bridget's depiction. I'm so pleased with this edition of the Maltese Falcon. The quality build assures me that it will last a long time, and the care and attention that went into its design only add to that value. I happen to have the 4th printing here, and that's fine by me. This book is very reasonable on the secondary market. You can often find a copy for $20 to $30, which isn't much more than you'd pay for a modern trade paperback edition. As for my old rabbit-eaten edition, it's a trip to the box of doom, because the Folio Society edition is the one that deserves to stay on my shelf.
Perfect.
As always, thanks for watching, and if you'd like more, keep an eye out for new content, or circle back to earlier videos in this series.